2012 in Nigeria, Babangida, who was the head of state, had promised to leave power for 3 years, and he kept pushing it, kept pushing it.
Yeah.
And by then, Nigeria had been under consistent military rule for like 10 years, you know. And if you've been under a dictatorship, it's the worst thing that can happen to you.
Hello and welcome to African Voices platform. I'm Chiwe Chahana. In June 1993, Nigeria held what many consider its freest and fairest election. Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola won. The military annulled that result, imprisoned him, and crushed the movement that had dared to believe democracy was possible. 5 years later, as international pressure finally mounted, Abiola died in custody during a meeting with senior American diplomats. That history is the subject of MKO, a documentary having its world premiere right here at Sheffield DocFest. Now, joining me are Ose Oyamendan, who is the film's director and a journalist who lived through those events. And also joining us is Véronique Bernard, who is its producer. Welcome to African Voices platform, both Ose and Véronique.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful work you're doing in documenting African stories. I wanted to get to the baseline of this and speak to you a little bit, Ose. You were a journalist at Weekend Concord, which was part of Abiola's own media group at the time that annulment happened. So you don't come to this story from a distance, really. So where does MKO, the film, begin for you personally?
Well, the film begins, if I may say, from the beginning, from the lead up to that election, the backdrop to it.
Yeah.
Because I came from uni as like a student union activist, so we've been fighting the army forever. And now it's like that fight was culminating in them leaving power. And that was the election for them to leave power, and I was very fortunate when I left uni. I got a job as a journalist in Weekend Concord, which at that time was the largest circulating weekly in Africa.
Okay.
So, and I got thrown like neck deep into it. And so the election itself was like a kind of freedom quest for Nigerians because we had been under the military for like a long time.
Yeah.
And even because by 1983, the army had been in power for all but 9 years. They just decided when, and so it was like the most important election in several lifetimes. And people came out to vote. I mean, Abiola was a Muslim. His running mate, Kingibe, was a Muslim. In Nigeria, that doesn't work. But
Right.
people overlooked all of that
Yeah.
because Abiola himself, MKO himself, was like this big Muslim who went to Christian schools, can read the Bible, can quote the Bible,
Mm.
and was very philanthropic to even Christians. So people were just tired, like whatever it takes to get the army out, we will do it. So that
Right.
was the backdrop, and that's where we kind of crept into this story.
Right. Just for context, what would normally happen in terms of presidential elections? Would you have somebody with deputy that's of a different faith and one of another? When you mentioned a little bit about Nigeria, and that doesn't happen. Is it Christian and Muslim that works?
It's not written down, it's not constitutional. But
Yeah.
Nigeria is a country that is half Christian, half Muslim. So
Okay.
so people tend to like balance the president is from the north, the deputy is from the south.
Right.
The president is from the south, the deputy is from the north. If the
Yeah.
president then but now that's changed too. So it was the first time anybody would dare try that, and MKO had that personality
Right.
to like pull that through. Like nobody cared really.
Okay, so that was quite a turning point. Then through the journey, that's where you started from, and it was quite personal because you were in the heart of his media company. But when did you know that the story had outgrown just journalism and that you needed to make it a film?
But I didn't know, that's the truth. That's it. Because I wasn't a filmmaker to start with. But when I When I was in film school, I went to film school at a place called University of Southern California in Los Angeles.
Right.
And I didn't do documentaries, I didn't do documentaries. But when we were like talking about the most important story, the day I mentioned it, everybody, the faculty keyed on it, that that's something you have to tell. But I always thought of it as a narrative.
Yeah.
And when I kind of evolved, I think a little bit intellectually, I knew you don't do a story like this justice by editorializing it as a narrative,
Yeah.
that you have to tell it as it is.
Mm.
And we were very fortunate that we had this access to these participants, to almost everybody involved in it, you know. So the challenge became how to convince them to talk, because people did not want to talk about it,
Right.
especially the people that had been in the wrong.
Yeah.
So, but we dove in and we were able to like get it done.
It looks to me that you probably did manage to convince a few people just from the trailer itself, some significant, but we'll probably get a bit into that detail later. Veronique, I was wondering if you could speak a bit to your role. So you've produced politically charged documentaries, which are across public television and international co-productions. What did you recognize in this particular project that made it feel urgent to you personally, beyond the obvious significance, but personally to you?
Well, I met Ose through the Documentary Producers Alliance. We were both working on the same committee. And Ose said to me, "Oh, I'm looking for a producer for a film I'm doing." And I said, "Okay, well, just send me the stuff and I'll see if I can recommend someone." And he sent me a reel that he'd put together. And I was busy. I didn't watch it for like a couple of weeks. And then when I watched it, I was like, oh my God, this story is incredible. First of all, I didn't know the story. I mean, the murder and the imprisonment and etc. So I thought this is an incredible story, and he has the elements to tell it. And like me, I think a lot of people who maybe aren't from Nigeria or aren't journalists or aren't involved in international politics don't know this story. So I really wanted to help him tell it, because I could also, I knew it was a very important story for him to tell, and
Yeah,
obviously for Nigeria, but it has so many layers, and it really resonates, particularly today in the
yeah.
world today, in terms of democracy being in peril. And also, once I started digging in, I said to Ose, "Okay, you've got your producer. I'm doing it." But the thing that really, I mean, I find it a very moving story, really. It really touches me, because I feel that it was a missed opportunity. And if Abiola had been able to run, and he would have won. I mean, he was able to run, but if they hadn't annulled the election,
Yeah,
and you had Mandela in South Africa, like the two engines of Africa, economic engines, it could have changed the future of the whole continent, I feel, in
absolutely.
terms of the power dynamics, globally.
Yeah, yeah. No, not really had thought about that soft power angle and the implications of those having worked at the same time when you're thinking South Africa and Nigeria, almost similar times. Absolutely. Um, so when he asked you, I was curious to learn from you. What did you bring to this story as we get into it that Ose couldn't on his own bring into it?
Well, I think, filmmaking, documentary, and all kind of filmmaking is a collaborative process. And I
Mm,
think that it's always great to have another pair of eyes or somebody to bounce, ideas off. Ose,
yeah,
I will, say at the beginning, was very reluctant to put himself in the story, because he
yeah,
felt it's not my story. Okay, I had to flee. I was, persecuted, but people died. Like, why is my story so important? But I knew that the fact that he was part of the story was important, for people to, it's not just somebody telling this story, it's somebody who was there, who experienced it, and then went and worked at Amnesty International in Washington, D.C. to try to help bring democracy back to Nigeria. So he was, a very important part. So that took a little bit of convincing, but eventually, we agreed on how much of him, should be in it. So that was one aspect in terms of editorial, but also from a production point of view, I was able to bring in a Canadian partner, co-producer,
Right.
who helped us by basically, covering the editing and all the post-production and final finishing of the film, which allowed us to finish the film.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds really good.
I think if I may add a bit to that,
Sure. Go
because
ahead.
I think Veronique is also
Underselling.
understating what she said. See, when making a film, especially documentary, it's a very, very lonely and very challenging process.
Hmm.
You know, uh, I think without Veronique, we probably are not here. You know, because somebody to like talk to like almost like on a daily basis, like ideas, like we should do this, do that. Who do we go with in terms of finding a way to complete it? You
Yeah.
know, like there are times that I have to do this, but gosh, we have to get this done on this project, like making personal sacrifices, without that promise of even like this is how I'm going to be financially rewarded.
Yeah.
So it's like way more, it's like blood sweat that is more than ever. So she's underselling. Without her, we're probably not sitting here. I mean,
Oh,
I,
yeah.
I would say that, yeah.
Yeah, bless. So thank you for that. I thank you for giving her flowers as well. So, um, there will be audiences that will be watching this and also hoping to come to Sheffield DocFest for the premiere. They may not know the history. So, in your words, who was MKO Abiola before he became the symbol that he is now? So, the man. How would you speak of him?
Is that for me?
That would be for you preferably, yeah, because you knew the man.
You know, for me, this guy was like an unusual man. Like it's like I wrote in a place, like it was like the most charismatic person that you've ever met, you know.
Yeah.
And when he walks into a room, you see him, you smell him. He used to have this very strong perfume that when he leaves for like hours, you still smell that it's there. And the first time I met him personally, because when I was in school, we were doing student union, it was like one of the enemies because he was friends with the military. So we didn't really like him, but it was tough not to like him because when he shows up, it's like, oh, what's the problem here today? He wants to solve it,
Okay.
because this guy, the way he tells his story, he was born in poverty, like abject poverty. He used to tell this story about the first time he ate egg. He was probably 18 years old in his
Mm.
girlfriend who later became his wife's house. So they couldn't afford that, you know. And the first time I met him, I was doing my youth service in Nigeria and I think I was working very hard and he
Mm.
kind of noticed. So I'm sitting in the office, the door opens and
Yeah.
like a couple of big guys enter and everybody stands up. I'm sitting, I don't know what's going on the other side of the door.
Yeah.
So it ended, but everybody stood up. So I knew somebody important was coming in. But
Mm.
this is a newspaper house, so this happens sometimes. And
Mm.
then I had the voice, he had this booming voice.
Yeah.
And he said, who is Ose? That's it. And so that's me. So my first thing was like
All right.
a rich guy, this is the richest black man in the world
Mhm.
coming to ask for me. I've probably written something terrible about one of his people that is on. So it comes in, and I was like 19, 20 then or so. So he walks in, and I kind of stood up, like, I mean, like,
You
big
had to,
deal.
I guess, with that
So I kind of
roaring
like,
voice.
I stood up and I looked at him. I would try to capture it in the illustration that was there. So I looked at him and he looked at me without anybody even saying, and says, who you the Ose? And I said, and he was surprised I was young.
All right.
And he looked at me for like a few seconds and he said, I've seen your work. Good job, good job. He kind of shook my hand and he said hi to his editor and then he left.
But what did you
So
think
that
he was
was
looking for you for, though? I mean, I would be scared.
no, the first thing I thought about, like, you've been very young, like I had
Yeah.
nothing to lose. So I just thought in that very 5, 10 seconds that I had to think. I was like, I probably wrote something about somebody that was critical, maybe his friend. He doesn't like it, so I'm probably getting fired. I don't care. I mean, they'll send me to the government people will send me somewhere else, you know. So that was my thought. So when he came, he said, I see your work, well done, and like, and then, you know, it was gone because once it shows up, there's a lot of people show up,
Yeah.
and a lot of people want to like, I have this problem, I have this, so he's going to attend to that. And then a few weeks later, I kind of interviewed him about politics. So I met him, and then he started advising me about life, you
Oh,
know, which
yeah.
was funny because it's the first thing he said to me is like, you're very young, you're hardworking, you're going somewhere. A lot of people that place, they're already old. They're going to hate you. So know that and keep working. So it was like, and then, yeah. So, but it was a very remarkable guy. Like, you go to his house, there's always people in that house coming to ask for help. And
Yeah.
in his house, he had 4 wings, 4 wives,
Four
like different
wives,
wings
did
for
you say?
in the house, yeah.
Okay, right.
And on the street, there are like a few more wives on the in the estate because he had like a lot of wives and a lot of
Okay.
children too. So and he could manage it
Yeah, because
because
he
his faith allows him to marry 4 wives anyway.
absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
like his daughter said, tradition allows him to marry more than 4. So if you can take care of it. And
Mm.
because it was also, I'm talking too much now, but I'm going to stop now because it
No.
was also um, his father. His father always had children from
Okay.
other women, but the kids would die very young.
Yeah.
And his mom had kids a few times, maybe 2 or 3 times, but the men would die, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
So his father decided that he would rather have a child from this woman and die than die and not have a child, you know, which is the
Yeah.
meaning of his name. Like when he was born, they named him Kashimawo, which means let us see if this one too will die, you know.
Kashimawo.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
when he grew, so it felt like when he grew up, he wanted to make up. This is my thinking, make up for what his father could not do. So that just, yeah.
Kind of overcompensating. You sound like, yeah, he sounds like, yeah, quite a colorful man. Thank you for bringing him to life for us in that moment. But can I take you to the 12th of June itself and the Nigerian imagination and where that is? Um, the film yourself describes June 12th as Nigeria's freest and fairest election. So I wondered if you could speak to what made that moment powerful in the Nigerian imagination. Was it about the result of the election or about what you started to speak about, that unification you saw, or was it about what was possible?
See, by June 12th in Nigeria, Babangida, who was the head of state, had promised to leave power for 3 years. And he kept
Mhm.
pushing it, kept pushing it.
Yeah.
And by then, Nigeria had been under consistent military rule for like 10 years, you know. And if you've been under a dictatorship, it's the worst thing that can happen to you. No matter how intelligent you are, they tell you what to do. It's like being under a prison. And
Right.
this is what they know, you know. And by that time, Abiola had built himself as this guy that understood Nigeria. Like he had friends all over the place. He had wives from all over the country. So he was like an in-law to like a lot of people. And, you know, in Africa, in-laws are very big stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was also very philanthropic. Like
Okay.
he really, it doesn't matter who you are, Christian, Muslim, it took it. So Nigerians at that time had gotten to know this guy and
Mm.
had gotten to feel it was part of them.
Okay.
And he just represented that fight to push out the military. A lot of people didn't really like him because some people thought he was too close to the military. But even those who don't like him felt his knowledge of the military would maybe allow him the facility to know how to manage them so they don't come back again. And on the day of that election, the military did everything to stop it. They even got an organization to kind of like get a court order not to have the election, but it did take place. And it's one of those elections, in Africa, when there's election, there's violence, there's all those kind of, but people went because it was a very ancient way of voting. You line up. It's not like you go and put it, but you line up and then they count you.
Oh, so you were not putting anything in a ballot box, you were being counted.
No. I mean, you will do that, but first they count you and then you get your ballot to put it. So they call it, I think, A4.
Yeah.
So everybody left the polling booth knowing who had won in that place. Abiola's opponent, MKO's opponent, was from the north, from Kano. MKO won in that guy's area.
Wow.
So it was like people were just like, this is the guy we want. Like they trusted the guy and they voted for him. So when the election was annulled, even the military they had no real reason for annulling it. They said there were some discrepancies and they blamed court judgment and stuff like that. No reason. So that's why there was like that rise and people rose up to like say, we're going to fight to protect this vote.
Yeah.
Some of them not because of Abiola, but because we had voted for this guy, we're going to protect it.
Okay, right. Okay. I think our audiences and myself will get a feel of that now and what that significance is. I'm going to ask this to both of you. We've just spoken about the election itself, but the story that you have brought us, you're bringing us, is operating between trauma as well as national trauma in this context, and as well as global consequences, maybe in the way that Veronique was starting to talk about it. I wondered for you as the filmmakers, how do you hold that balance between the two so that one doesn't consume the other? Or maybe not balance, yeah, but how does that one register and not consume the other part when you're thinking of both the national trauma as well as the global consequence? How did you get around it?
Do you want me to answer that, Ose, first? Well, I think that in this story's case, they're actually intricately linked. You can't really separate them because the fact is that the United States in particular, and European countries as well, didn't play their part. After the crisis, instead of supporting democracy, which they pay lip service to, they actually supported the military against Abiola, even though MKO was a huge popular African person, the most popular African person in America, in the Congressional Black Caucus. So they basically betrayed him because of oil, as did the rest of the Western world that had oil interests in Nigeria. So, and that story, I think, is repeated throughout history and throughout certainly throughout the continent, but in other continents as well. So I think that in telling that story, you have to bring the global agents into it, and just so that's where the consequences are in terms of the future of Nigeria was basically compromised because of oil.
Yeah, and yeah, it sounds like you say the story of non-state actors coming in as well and influencing that change. Did you have anything you wanted to say to that or say as well?
No, I think Veronique added perfectly.
Yeah, that was quite. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot in the film, and I'm now trying to think, do I know enough about Ibrahim Babangida or not? But I think I'll probably learn a little bit more when I see the film itself. I wondered if we could go into the investigation itself. Is that something we can talk about? So in the film, it's described as combining investigative journalism with the conventions of a political thriller. In practice, what does that actually mean? What should people expect when they hear that?
Well, the film itself, the story itself is a political thriller. Somebody wins an election, locked up, fight to get him out, fight to save Nigeria's democracy, and then he dies while having tea with the most senior American ambassadors. So
Yeah.
what happened here? So that's a thriller. So the investigative part is now trying to go get these people that are so much a key part of it to talk. So that's our investigation, like just finding them, convincing them to talk, which was a big deal. A lot of people just felt, let it go,
Yeah.
because yeah.
Yeah. Did any of the investigation change the film, your approach to the film, or alter what you had found in any way?
Well, see, when you do a film like this, you
Yeah.
go in, for me,
Mm-hmm.
thinking you knew everything that happened.
Yeah.
But very, very early on, I found out that we don't know. I mean, I didn't know what I thought I knew.
Yeah.
And then we found out that nobody, even the main actors, knew every aspect of it. Because one of the key things I keep hearing in the last few years was like, what actually happened from some of the key actors. I've had a couple of former presidents of Nigeria ask me, so what did you find out about this? And I thought they would know.
Oh.
So in this film, for the first time, you actually find out what nobody's ever known, what's never been discovered before.
Mm.
So we're excited for people to see it and fill in that gap.
Wow. Yeah. So it remains unresolved, even in the film. That's the gap that people will be curious to be feeling, right? That's what you're saying. Like we'll be curious to think, what is that missing piece? But how did you know, when you were speaking to all these people, that's quite a difficult question to ask. How did you or the team approach that responsibility of putting that question to the people? Like explain the circumstances, how he died, especially when you're speaking to presidents, for example, who would feel they should know more.
Well, having a big mouth and being a journalist, it's a very bad combination. And then having this student unionism thing. So you don't have fear. Like somebody once asked me, "Are you not afraid about this?" I'm like, "What? They're gonna kill you?" Because that's the fear people
Mm,
hold over you. And when they know that it's off the table, and they talk. I mean, you just do your job, really. That's
yeah.
what I think.
Yeah. Maybe for both of you, how do you keep then that type of story from how do you honor its dignity so that it doesn't slip into conspiracy or just simplification? How do you manage that? Or how did you specifically for this one?
Well, I would say that, in terms of the murder mystery, we just stick to the facts. I mean, Ose, as he said, gets everybody to speak like it's a 360-degree view of the
Yeah,
events.
yeah.
Some people are lying, right? You can't assume that everybody's telling the truth all the
Mm,
time. So
yeah,
you have to pass, facts from fiction, and I think that what we do is, in the end, we present all the facts to the audience,
yeah.
and we hint at what happened, but we leave it for the audience to decide. We give them all the information and we leave it for them to decide.
Yeah, yeah. Did you personally have to do any trust building, Veronique, then in these conversations, or was that left to other people? Did you get involved in that?
I was not in Nigeria for the filming with
No.
Ose.
Okay, lovely. Um, so congratulations, you're coming to Sheffield, both of you. How did you land with that one, and why DocFest? Why not any other festival for the premiere?
Do you want me to say something about that, Ose?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it turns out, look, it's very difficult to get into festivals these days. So we knew that this film would have a premiere somewhere, this year. But to be honest, Sheffield DocFest is the perfect launch pad for this particular film, because it's an international film. It's a political story that has ramifications, way beyond the country of Nigeria. And DocFest is kind of known, I think, for having this kind of really interesting political films that deal with stories that are not obvious, not stories that other people have already told. So I'm thrilled that we're going to be at Sheffield for our world premiere.
Lovely. I like that. Yeah. Can I ask you a follow-on question, Veronique? This would probably apply to you more than O'Shea. When you take a film such as this one to such festivals, how do you resist, not personally resist, but how do you resist that the festival itself does not denigrate it into something that speaks of Africa just as reduce it to just a crisis story? Specifically maybe with this film, are there any cushions around it that do not just bring it down to that level of Africa is just a crisis?
Oh, I think that festival programmers are pretty smart. And if they select a film like this, they know
Mm-hmm.
why they're selecting it. And, they're not going to just paint a large brush, and just of the whole continent. I mean, I don't know if you had a look at the program, but they actually have a number of other Nigerian films
Yeah, I
and a
have
South
done.
African film.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that perhaps this year, or this, artistic director, or, has a particular interest, or perhaps, this is the year where they may be looking at different stories coming out of different countries of Africa.
Yeah.
But I feel that programmers and then audiences particularly are very discerning, and I mean, this is one of the main reasons I think Ose wanted to make this film. Is this is a story that the world needs to know about, and these stories are often not told. I mean, many
Mm.
other people have tried to tell this story before,
Yeah.
very like big companies, entities, with well-known names, and they were not able to do what Ose did, which is to get everybody to open up to him and tell him what they knew.
Right. And hence I suppose O'Shea going into the oil industry as well, as we've seen, and the global feel around the global impact of that, right?
Yeah, I don't understand the question. Sorry.
Oh, I'm saying so I guess also that global dimension when you go more into the oil industry, that transcends just that being a localized crisis story, but we see it more within the wider context of global politics, really, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the story really is a very Nigerian story, but with very, very significant global implication and interference. You know, it's
Yeah.
like this election in Nigeria, one of the largest oil producing co countries in the world, and it's happened at a time. I mean, it's just like today. It's happening
Yeah.
at a time that there's like a huge mid crisis in the Middle East
Yeah.
that affects oil, and the global economy is threatening to go into a slum. So where can we handle? Oh, let's make sure we tie Nigeria out. Matter and this is like you taking the fate of over 100 million people then
Mm.
and just tossing it into the bin just because you want oil,
Yeah.
and yeah, so it is it's a very sad story about
Mm.
how powers deal with people without power. And the sad thing was at that time, the people in Nigeria, the people in Africa always believed that their old colonial masters or America cared about them more than these people in power, you know.
Mm.
And when the Nigerian case came up, like very clear, like the United States had a Democrat in power. So you can't say that it was Clinton, you
Mm.
know. Even in the UK, I mean, the conservatives were in power, but Tony Blair always talked about this, Nigeria, and that. And the moment he got there, he just shut up about Nigeria.
Just
Didn't even care, he just didn't talk about it anymore. Like, so and it's like we need the oil, and the army is one that will guarantee it for us. That was it.
that was it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right. Thank you. I'm going to come back to DocFest itself and just ask you both, what would you invite the African diaspora to bring into the room? What would you hope for? You've got two showings, so and there's also a Q&A, but what kind of energy would you like to be brought into that space, especially with the African diaspora?
Okay, let me speak first, then maybe Veronique can back. You know, one of the problems with films, like African films, so there are three Nigerian films there,
Yeah,
but our film is the only film that's made by a Nigerian.
yeah.
The other two films are really like, which is great,
Mhm.
But when we make films, it's very important to show all these elite festivals. And Sheffield DocFest is one of the biggest in the world, to
Mm.
show that the audience will show up. Because we also have to think for the festival. They see a film they like, but who's gonna come see this?
Mhm.
So we want the African diaspora and the larger African loving, African interested community in Sheffield to come out and show that they do like films from this continent. They will see films like this from this continent, like maybe even sell it out a week or so before. So we're forced to get like, so they can get bigger spaces for them because the festival, they have to think also. So we want them to
Mhm.
show up strongly, maybe even show up their African pride if they want to do that. I'm going to be wearing my traditional Nigerian clothes because that's what I have actually. So
So,
yeah,
so show
it's
up.
a film I think we should all be proud of.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. Before I come back to you, so we can end or say, I just wondered if Veronique wanted to make any last contributions to this conversation as well.
Well, I'd just like to say that despite the story being what it is,
Mm.
that, it's a celebration of Nigerian culture. I mean, the film, we have a Nigerian-American composer. The music is,
Oh,
all
wonderful.
Nigerian.
Yeah.
And, Nigerian crews when we're filming in Nigeria. And there's a lot of particularly in the archival and the sort of television archival and the music. I mean, I think that if you're Nigerian, I think you will see yourself reflected in the film, and so there is a celebratory aspect to it. In fact, there's one section in the film where it's a particularly dramatic moment
Right.
and Ose chose to use some very uplifting Nigerian music.
Mhm.
And for a while, I was like, that doesn't work. Why are you doing that? And he said, yes, it does. This is why I'm doing it. And it really does.
Right. Oh, that sounds brilliant. And Sheffield, at the moment, we're riding a wave where we're having a lot of theatre productions by lead Nigerian companies. So there's quite a wave, and also you're coming right in the middle of Migration Matters Festival. So we're hoping that anyone who is listening and watching from that's coming from Migration Matters Festival will be able to come to that. Yeah, but thank you. We love the dance. Ose, I'm going to end with you, and I'm going to end with your filmmaker statement. You had two sentences there that said it's not just Nigerian history, it's a warning to the world. I was curious about that, so that I personally, because I'm interested in learning, what does that mean in this context?
Well, in this context, for me, like when you look at the world the way it is today, you
Yeah.
know, there is this grab mentality. It's like you have to fight for yourself and defend what is yours. You have to fight for your votes. It doesn't even mean in Nigeria. Even in the United States where I am now, you have to fight for your votes because every day people use the law, use the courts to deprive you of your rights. And if you sit down and let it happen, one day you'll be a prisoner in your own country, in your own space. The fact that it happened in Nigeria once, you can say, it's just Africa. No, it's happening globally now. You know,
Yeah.
it's happening in Europe. I mean, there's the whole Russia and Ukraine thing going on. It's happening in America. So it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So you have to like sit up and take charge and also I want to like say like in terms of the audience in Sheffield, if I may, like
Please go
even for the
ahead.
non-African audience,
Yeah.
like it's a film for even the non-African audience to see how their MPs
Mhm.
choose interest that is not theirs, how their MPs are bought by big powers just to deprive them of progress of their rights. How the decisions of their MP sometimes cause crisis in other parts of the world that kind of like overflow into places like Sheffield.
Mm,
And
mm.
that they have to always know that, like, what is happening, what is this person doing to me? Like, the film gives them an opportunity to see how their leaders act when they leave home.
Great, brilliant. Thank you so much for that closing. The Q&A part, we're going to have a few people coming in that have worked on the production for the Q&As and both showings of Q&As, right?
I don't know. Like right now, I think right now it's the director and the moderator. I don't know. When we get there, we'll find out.
Ose Oyamendan and Veronique Bernard, thank you so much. MKO has its world premiere at Sheffield DocFest significantly on 12th of June, which is the day of the election. The film asks what happened in Nigeria in 1993, why it happened, and what remains unresolved. Those are not just historical questions. For screening details, follow Sheffield DocFest and the MKO documentary platforms. Links are also included in all our socials. This has been African Voices Platform. I'm Chiwe Chihana.